and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Kerrie Jordan. I have a very special episode for you today. I am joined by two guests, and we are going to discuss the findings from a recent report called The Future of Work in Manufacturing. Now, this is a report that was run by Epicor of over 1,400 manufacturing leaders and 1,200 workers worldwide. And it explores key issues impacting the industry like workforce sentiment, connected worker technologies, and productivity. So we're going to dig into it all. But before we get to the findings, I'd like to introduce you to my guests. So I will first introduce you to Jennelle McGrath, the CEO of Market Veep. Now, you might recognize Market Veep. They're known as the go-to agency for manufacturing companies that are looking to expand their market share, to update sales processes, and to level up their marketing. Market Veep has earned accolades such as HubSpot Diamond Certified Accredited Partner, Inc. Best Workplaces Winner, and SBA Certified Woman-Owned Small Business. Now, the agency has also been recognized as an Inc. 5000 Fastest Growing Company and awarded the Nettie Award for Boutique Agency of the Year. I am so looking forward to learning from Jennelle's leadership and experience and really getting her perspective on the future of work in manufacturing. So, Jennelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here. Can't wait to get into it.
Absolutely. All right. So my second guest that I'll introduce is a returning guest of this show, Kiva Allgood with the World Economic Forum. She's the head of the Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Supply Chains and member of the executive committee. The World Economic Forum is the international institution for public-private cooperation that brings together leaders from businesses, government, and civil society to address global challenges. It's a nonprofit, impartial, and independent organization that connects leaders across sectors in a variety of ways to really foster dialogue and cooperation to help all organizations address critical issues, to help improve the state of the world, and to drive positive change across our global community. Now, Kiva brings a wealth of experience and insights. She's a seasoned executive, a board member, and an advocate for women in technology. She's won many awards across the industry and has had leadership roles in a variety of companies, which I'm sure will contribute some interesting perspectives on the future of work in manufacturing. So, Kiva, welcome back. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Kerrie. It's great to be here.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our discussion here. And the Future of Work in Manufacturing report breaks down the topics into 5 categories. So we'll kind of follow them. The first being current state of manufacturing work, then the technological impact and upskilling. We'll talk sustainability in manufacturing, future trends and workforce preparedness, and then we'll get to some predictions. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the current state of manufacturing work. And the report highlighted here key challenges we saw that were related to morale, engagement, and operational pressures really showed a significant disconnect between leadership and the frontline workers. And just as an example, we saw 57% of managers rated their morale as high compared to only 45% of workers. So managers had also said some of their top pressures were ensuring safety compliance and hitting production targets, while workers said their top challenges were increased cost of raw materials. And they pointed out that is really closely tied to higher workloads and stress, which they also called out as a challenge. So, we're seeing some disconnects here, some morale issues. So, Jennelle, I was hoping we could get started with you. Given your work with manufacturers, what are some ways that you have seen leaders improve workplace morale, perhaps through different management practices? What have you been working?
So we work with manufacturers and help them essentially streamline their technology. So by doing that, it gives the organization a lot more transparency. And so anytime we hear all of these things around disconnect of differences of feelings and emotions related to morale, a lot of times we're able to kind of pinpoint it back to lack of transparency, whether that be transparency in their processes, new programs that they're launching, even different departments truly functioning in silos. And so by having things like daily huddles, making sure that there's dashboarding and having conversations about things that are coming up as opposed to, oh, by the way, this is this massive process improvement that we're going to do. And oh, yeah, you guys are going to have to lead the implementation of it. And so the more transparency leading up to and having that involvement in those processes, we found to really be very impactful into getting more people on board, being excited about it, and being motivated instead of demotivated.
Yeah, transparency is absolutely just so critical in many different ways, and really helps you to then like communicate, right,
Mhm.
from the managerial side to the worker side, and having that dialogue, I think, just in and of itself can really help. So thank you for that, Jennelle. Kiva, I wanted to ask you about new technologies because they're often deployed with the goal of improving production. Sometimes to offset higher costs of raw materials, but just that change itself can sometimes add additional stress on the workers. So, what are some ways that you see manufacturers maybe involving workers or really to help manage change across the business?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think whether it's a new technology or they're going digital or not, change management is a critical component to being able to motivate and develop a transparent and open conversation for Janelle's comments. What we've seen, again, we have the opportunity through our global lighthouse network to go and see the best of the best, right? And I think we have to also be open about the discussion around automation. So often when people are deploying new technology, whether that's a sensor, whether that's a new high-speed line, or just upgrading some different machinery, it can be met with skepticism that, oh, wait, this is the path to me not having a job anymore.
Mhm.
And the more honest and open you are about that transition and kind of where you're headed as a company, and then bringing the teams along with you. So as Jennelle said, making sure that they're part of the solution. We've had several case studies where people on their first line were deploying sensors, and the teams would right behind them go and knock all the sensors off. And then they're like, why isn't this working? Well, in part because they didn't bring the team members along, right? They brought somebody else in to do the implementation and didn't say, this is the direction that we're heading. We have amazing examples where companies have really focused on empowering that worker and often helping to develop the solution, right? And having them be part of the team from the beginning to help make the right decision, and then deploying and leading that challenge on multiple lines and in multiple sites. So it really does come down to the classic change management model, and also doing some of that upfront training, like, okay, this is why we need data off this machine. And with that data, we're going to do this. And here's how you can learn about kind of how that data will be used. And what do you think was the best methodology in maybe helping to write some of the algorithms and do those different types of tasks and giving them a new skill, right? So there's always a way to include the people who actually know the processes the best in that process improvement.
I kind of want to go down this path a little bit more because you brought up empowering workers. And I think that is such an important element of managing change and ensuring success for the business when you're bringing on new technologies. Also, it's such a recurring theme when it comes to leveraging automation and AI. So, if we can get into a little bit more about empowering workers, Kiva, if I could ask you first, what are some of those examples, like different technologies and things or approaches that you see work to help empower workers?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, whether no matter what study you read, you pick one of the 10, we will not have enough people to work in factories. Whether that number's we're going to be light by 2 million or 3 million, it's a lot. In order to be able to produce the products, and to me, manufacturing is the most noble profession out there. Starts with raw materials and ends up in something that people can use, that helps save lives. But we have a difficult time attracting and retaining talent, and especially younger talent. And so I think one of the key things is really bringing people to the knowledge set that manufacturing isn't what it used to be. It's not dirty and dangerous and ugly. I just got back from a trip and I got to see almost a half a dozen factories. Not single one of those had a speck of dust or dirt in it, right?
Mhm.
And some of them had automated guided vehicles picking up heavy loads and taking them around. Those were jobs that people didn't necessarily want because they were lifting heavy things. But now you've got team members that are leading a line of AGVs, right? So basically they're robotics supervisors, and they're ensuring that they bring that technology. Now they have to understand how to use the machines. They have to understand how they function. And those are all things and skills that they gain on the job and through on-site training. So there's a lot of ways. We've got some partners who have partnered with universities, and every single day they have a class on either machine learning or AI and data science. So if you're a high school grad or a college grad, a technician, a mechanic, you have the opportunity to actually participate and gain that skill and those insights. So the companies that do that best, where they put kind of that knowledge first and forward from the executives all the way down to the workers, are the ones that are actually seeing the biggest transformation and the highest improvement in productivity and increased morale, because people see that they have a career path. They know they have a skills matrix. Right? When you start as a technician here, I need to have this one skill. I'd like to get up to that skill level. Well, then that requires you to get a certification in data science through one of their programs. And you can, see where you need to go career-wise based off that skill matrix as well. So it is a lot of the transparency, but then it's also saying this is a journey, and you can come in the door with little to no training, and we have a commitment to you to create a good career path where you get to gain all these different types of skills. And I think from that perspective, that's where you see the stickiness, and that's also where you see people who really, enjoy what they're doing.
I feel like we've just so naturally flowed into the next topic, which is technological impact and upskilling, because that is a form of empowering workers. And just as you have explained, it's so important to investing in the team. Jennelle, I would love to get your take on the work that you've done with your agency and other ways that you've seen companies successfully empower workers or invest in others and different upskilling programs.
Yes. I think to Kiva's point, in terms of the mentality of like, oh my gosh, automation and AI is going to take my job, it's more around what we tell people is it's going to take the things that you're not in love with doing, like the robots that are lifting the heavy stuff that doesn't have to necessarily be a human. On our side, we see it from sales reps who are having to manually remember on a sticky note or a pad of paper when to follow up with those prospects, and then not be able to actually report out to the management on how big is the pipeline, where are they in those steps. And it frees up a whole bunch of other mental space to be able to just use the automation and do more volume, close bigger deals, make more sales, which increases their morale and their excitement around their job and keeps them sticky to the organization. We've also seen it on the service delivery side. We've seen organizations who are still using paper. I vividly remember a client who had paper orders down their hallway, and that is how their organization actually tracked where the order was in the process. And so leaning into automation and AI and reporting, being able to take that, God forbid something happened to that hallway or somebody walked by and a sheet fell off, using those automation tools to help streamline that. And anybody at the organization can know, be it a dashboard or a notification, at a glance, exactly how speed of production is, what they need to order, if they're behind, keeping in the loop with client feedback. All of that is much easier at the fingertips as opposed to having to focus only on manual.
And I imagine, going from that paper-driven process to something more digital, of course, goes back to that change management, but it is an investment. So I wanted to get to the balance, right? That balance of adopting new technologies as well as training, the investment, the change. So Jennelle, if I could ask you to kind of, if we could dig into that a little bit more, Yeah, how do organizations strike that balance between adopting new technologies and the training and development and investment that's necessary for a new system?
I think it's about baby steps. So we have organizations who come in and their leadership is so excited. They're like, let's do it all. And then we kind of pump the brakes and say, well, the rest of the team might not be ready to do it all. And so getting them excited and having phased approach to that adoption makes it the stickiest and the most successful. So we are a HubSpot partner. So all of our clients use HubSpot, whether that be through marketing tools, sales tools, service tools, and it can be a combination depending on kind of what that pain point is. A lot of our clients are coming from using other software. So they might be using something like a Salesforce, whether they're coming off of Salesforce onto HubSpot or they want to integrate it so that that data is flowing bidirectionally. Ultimately, the goal is to do it as phases and get full buy-in and give people the time to actually adjust and feel successful in that moment before moving on to the next thing, as opposed to saying, here's all of these awesome technology tools, and this is going to solve and make your life so much easier. It's too much for somebody to take on all of that at once.
I can absolutely imagine it can be overwhelming. So I can see how there would be, great value in tools and partners and associations to help with that approach. So Kiva, if I can ask you, when it comes to like the public and private organizations that the World Economic Forum works with and helping that collaboration between what other sorts of upskilling initiatives or guidance do you provide to organizations, manufacturers that are going through this kind of change?
Digital transformation is kind of at I'd say the core, and understanding your digital readiness is a very important part of that journey. So we actually do have a framework and some assessment tools that help an organization understand where they are in that journey. And that's with an assessment of your people, an assessment of your infrastructure and your machines. I mean, do you have any data? Like, do you collect anything today? And it then lets you understand, okay, which building blocks do I need to really address first in order to help me on this journey, right? And I think it's important to take a pause before you jump in, because often folks will find something or say, oh, this looks like a cool technology, and they implement the technology for technology's sake because it looks good, but they haven't necessarily properly scoped the problem and understood how the technology can help improve a process. And so taking that time and just stepping back is an important component to your overall ability to be successful. So of the lighthouses, so this is the Global Lighthouse Network is a peer group network. It is basically by a board, people apply to join the Lighthouse Network, and it's a competition. It's kind of like the Michelin star, right? When you get a Michelin star as a restaurant, it's the best of the best, and it's voted on by your peer group. But the bar is super, super high. So 100% of the lighthouses that were just announced are using generative AI almost. So and using AI in some way. Most factories do not. Right? Not today, but they will. And so I think really understanding where you are in that journey and taking the time to do the assessments is a very critical ingredient to your ability to be successful. And then scoping the problem statement properly. What is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to use less water? Are you trying to improve productivity? Are you trying to, solve for a labor shortage? You can't hire a late shift. So how do you keep things moving? If you really know kind of what you're trying to do, then it's a lot easier. So the number one, out of all the data from over 800 applications to the Global Lighthouse Network, the number one enabler, though, is having a person who is dedicated and assigned to being that transformation lead and making sure that they have the support of the board, if it's a publicly traded company, and or the leadership. Without having that person, things tend to just spin. The second is that they have a unified IoT stack.
Can I ask you why though? Like, Why is it that, I mean, if it's so above and beyond that having a leader, why do you think that that is the case, that it's number one?
Yeah, we've actually followed up on that. It has a lot to do with the fact that the business model, the way you write a business model today to get a new piece of machinery, doesn't necessarily work when you're trying to do digital and trying to or do reskilling. I need 500K to roll out this new tool and to train everybody, but you're not 100% sure what the impact or outcome will be. Now, in the partners that we have and the sites we've been able to see, often the plant manager will say, I don't care. We're going to do this because I know it's the right thing to do. I know we will get the improvements if we have the data and the insights. And they're always right. I mean, the numbers and the enhancements that you see, you can go and search the full database of different use cases, is always double digit, right? It's always a huge improvement. And it's typically both sustainability goals and process improvement goals, because those things are actually symbiotic, right? If you improve the process and you use less water and you have less waste, that helps you on the sustainability side as well. But the framework of this is how I get financing to get new machines. Here's what my ROI is. This will get paid back in 1.8 years or 2.4 is really difficult to do when you're doing digital transformation. That is why it's so critical to have somebody who understands and somebody who can advocate and help change that mindset, both in the boardroom, but also on the factory floor.
Fascinating. I had to ask, to dig a little bit deeper into that, because what a measure of success to have that advocate out front. And so I wanted to actually get to our next topic too, because it's very closely related, as you were mentioning, sustainability. So that's our third topic, sustainability in manufacturing. And this, of course, entails meeting government and industry regulations, such as emission standards, but it also entails ensuring long-term operational resilience, especially when it comes to managing supply chains and resources efficiently. Many manufacturers have been in business for decades. And so in our report, it was interesting because sustainability ranked high among both managers and workers. For example, 75% of managers said that supply chain resilience and sustainability are, quote unquote, very important to their organizations. So it's interesting to see that that is such a resounding theme. Jennelle, maybe if I could ask you, how are manufacturing leaders balancing sustainability efforts with operational goals? As you're working with organizations and they're investing in sustainability, how are you seeing that align with their operations?
I think they go through and they do all the right stuff. They know and they want to, and they do it and they implement it. And what we see by the time they come to us is they might not be telling everybody about all of this awesomeness that they're doing. So whether that is telling their customers about their sustainability programs, promoting it in their social and their website channels, even internally, I think that there's a lack of sometimes awareness of all of the things that the organization is either in the process of implementing, is part of their timeline, or that they're openly doing now, but it's kind of like the best kept secret that nobody knows about. And so I think that there's been definitely a shift since it's become such a prominent topic. And one of the things that we look for is channels to make sure that that message is being broadcast across all of the avenues, so that all their good work can be, explored.
That sounds great. And Kiva, if I can ask you, what sort of sustainable practices or technologies are emerging as some of the most popular, most impactful, those that are perhaps improving resource efficiency or other goals? And I think you have such an interesting perspective too when it comes to the public versus the private, and how organizations are working with governments too to meet some regulations.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one ask that we hear is that we have to have more harmonization, right? So there's two different, I think, mindset. We did a really big study on net zero, and we have a program, an initiative called the Net Zero Accelerator. And this is all around both abatement and reporting. Now, abatement, you have to look at scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. That's the whole value chain. Everybody who's producing stuff that goes into your product, and then how you get the product to consumers, how they consume it, and then hopefully how it gets recycled. So it's that full cycle. The tools there, I think it's still has to be data transparency around the BOM and the information, both from a resilience perspective, but then also on, designing in circularity and recycling. So it starts at the beginning of the kind of creative process. And there's a lot of different tools there. I think on the abatement side, so in a factory, the more data that you have, the better the process improvements. So there's lots of great stories. Actually, with AI, I think manufacturing is one of those where you're seeing some really big improvements, but they've been using machine learning for decades. This isn't a new thing. In fact, in factories, I think it's funny sometimes because people are like, oh, I haven't been doing that forever. It's not new. But now that you call it artificial intelligence instead of machine learning or an algorithm, everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon. A good example there is if you think about forecasting. Very hard. We've got a great example of a best practice, lower volume, higher value company, but very mixed. So they've got one base product with about 50 different accessories, and their forecast accuracy was in the low 40s. And no matter what they did, they improved their sales funnel. They tried to, teach salespeople how to go through that sales cycle and funnel better so that they increase accuracy. They took one of their supply chain people. He went back and got a master's degree in data science and came back. And now they have accuracy of 88%. How did they do that? Like what was it that he did that they couldn't figure out before? Well, he applied, often there's typically around 12 different types of ways to do forecasting, like known ways, different models, whether that's a linear model, whether that's you look back. He took all 12 of those models with all of their data across all 40 of their products and let the model choose. You could never have done that. That would have taken a human in Excel, I don't know, probably a month, right? So then by the time you figured it out, it would be too late. Now you can do that in real time because of the compute and processing power, and because they have real-time data from the manufacturing floor on how products are moving through as well. So think about the cost savings, think about the WIP and all of the stuff, inventory that they're saving. So it again, you can look at a single process and just apply new insights and data to that in a way that you couldn't before because it was too expensive, or it was too difficult to do. You can't run a Monte Carlo in 15 different flavors every single day. But now, using this information, that they were able to actually see that dramatic improvement. So that's a good example on the supply chain side, which had a huge impact for them on their environmental metrics, right? On waste, on reuse. And another is, every factory there's a great company, a startup called Guidewheel, and they basically have this sensor that you can put onto all your currently installed equipment, and it's like a Fitbit for a piece of equipment. And based on its electrical signal, it can tell you how it's performing, when it needs maintenance, and huge dramatic improvement in overall energy use. And you don't have to do a multi-billion-dollar retrofit and upgrade everything. You can attach it to the stuff you have already. So when there's an idea or an option around sustainability, there are so many tools and startups and even larger scale commercial grade products. You just have to have a plan, and you have to have a defect you're trying to fix, and then you just go searching.
That's so interesting. And I imagine that there are some listeners that are like, I've done this. I have some great stories, but they just don't know how to tell it. So Jennelle, I wanted to ask you, if there are those organizations out there that have been making some really great progress, just like Kiva explained, when you're working with them, how do you encourage them to tell their story, to get out to their customers, even I can imagine within their organization, because that could be very inspiring.
I think sometimes they think single channel and they're like, I've sent out the email, I can check off the box I have told people. And in marketing and sales, it's a multi-prong omni-channel approach. So most of the time people can absorb it, but the more that they're going to see your brand over and over. So we tell people, we should send out a press release. We should put this on LinkedIn. We should make sure that all your sales reps are connected in HubSpot and that message gets pushed out to all of their channels. So if each one of them, you have 10 sales reps and each one of them is connected to 5,000 people, that message is now broadcast for free to all of those people. Having a dedicated sustainability page on the website, just getting really creative about incorporating even the logos in your monthly newsletters, making sure that it's in your email templates, in your salespeople's email signatures, and making sure that it is very prominent and that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of just another one-off email of an announcement that goes out.
So this brings me to our next topic, which is future trends and workforce preparedness. Because I imagine in order to, change your business process to the point where you are thinking, okay, we need to get the word out differently. And we need to think not single channel, but omni-channel and have these different approaches. What sort of structure do you suggest that companies put into place so that they can be prepared for the future and they are thinking omni-channel and into the future and in different ways that they're going to have to adapt as things change?
Great question. So I think baby steps. So nothing fast ever, slow adoption. So we'll put people through, like HubSpot has academy classes. So these small bits of information, knowledge-based articles, looking at what they're actively doing and making small tweaks to those processes. Kiva had a great example of the data science and understanding, how a machine can do this instantaneously. We see similarly on like the sales side, where the machine learning is so good that it can look at the entire pipeline and say, who has the greatest likelihood to close based on the last deals that have closed the fastest in the sales cycle. And so getting people excited about these small bits and moving that momentum then to the next tier. But it's absorbed and practiced and mastered and then go on to the next thing.
A phased approach sounds prudent. It's because then you can, get your wins, learn, go to the next step. Kiva, when you are working with organizations and you're encouraging them to structure and get set up for the future, definitely education. I mean, just as you had shared that example, I can imagine that is an important element. How else do you encourage organizations to create structure that's going to scale into the future and maybe like future-proof them to some extent to whatever new technology is coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think the scale part of the question is a critical one because a lot of companies get stuck in pilot purgatory, right? They do one thing because they wanted to try a tech and then it doesn't go anywhere and then doesn't have an impact. And that can also often do more damage than good. So there has to be a long-term commitment to doing things differently and then figuring out how to reward these new digitally native individuals, right? And I will say that as you're recruiting and bringing in folks that maybe are a younger demographic, they need that digital component of things to stay. Like that's super important to them, right? And then for the folks that have maybe been on the factory floor for a long time, how do you get that knowledge out of their head? Because they do know, like they actually can often hear when a machine isn't running right. They're like, oh, something's wrong. Let's go figure that one out. And then the younger person doesn't. So it's blending those two things together and that's where we start to see some really amazing examples. I think we were at a partner site and they used the factory's workers got to play with the 3D printers, right? And the 3D printers on new tools for assembly. And they designed and came up with a tool that it used to take 45 minutes to complete this part because the screws are really hard to get in. And then they were able to 3D print a new harness for it that allowed the screws to fall in like all the way in. And that reduced it down to less than 10 minutes. But that came from somebody who'd been doing that process for a very long time, right? But you're not going to, go and design and cut metal and stuff, but you can 3D print something for $10 and actually you really improve the process. So the more you expose the team members to what the new technology can be used for, and you inspire them with examples that actually reduces the downtime and improves the quality and improves the process, they come up with the ideas. So I think it's also creating that opportunity where you do a huddle and you say, hey, we're going to talk about 3D printing today. And these are some examples how other, companies have actually implemented it. We do a monthly, what we call lighthouse tours and visits. And the last time we had 60 people on that call, and it was walking through a state-of-the-art factory around sustainability and what they'd done on the factory floor to improve their sustainable metrics. So I think if you go and you explore, you can learn the best practices that are scalable. And I think it's important that, you also go on that journey. I do think as an industry, we have to move faster. We can't wait another 10 years for people to kind of catch up. And there are markets and countries that are way more advanced. And that is in part because the government has stepped in and said, I'm going to help pay for your digitization journey. I will give you money to go digital and start to collect this information and data. And I think in the US, we have to actually do a better job at that as well.
So can I ask you if we could go to predictions with that as the backdrop? What do you think is coming next? And Kiva, if I can ask you first, in terms of perhaps how, in the context of future of work, right, in manufacturing, how do you see workforce engagement evolving and changing over the next year, 2 years, 3 years?
That's a hard question because I don't think you have the same answer in every part of the world. I think I would answer that question very differently in India and China and Malaysia than I would in the US because the labor and the people components, both strengths and opportunities, are very different. I think though across the board, as an industry, we do have to do a better job of reframing and maybe using some of Jennelle's creativity, change the narrative. And that has going to have to start with K through 12. Parents should be proud when their kids decide to become a mechanic and an electrician and a tradesperson. They should have pride in that. And in some markets, they do. They have amazing apprenticeship programs. You start getting paid the moment you walk in and you start learning. In other markets, those things just don't exist. So that also is the foundational components that government needs to provide. In order to thrive and manufacture, you need that infrastructure. That includes talent. That includes clean energy, clean water, roads, the ability to get things in and out. And the talent starts with education. And so for me, I'd say that's probably the biggest opportunity across the board is to elevate the art of really working in a factory and knowing that, hey, this is a positive career choice. These are great skills, and that's something that's also transferable, and you can change and you can learn, and you can start off as a technician, and the next thing you know, you could be running a network operations centers and managing billions of dollars of equipment, right? That's a journey. That's you start in one and you end in the other. So for me, I think I aspire and I would love to really kind of change the narrative around what it means to be a frontline worker, right? And to dedicate your life to making products that other people use on a daily basis.
That is so inspirational. Thank you for sharing that. And
yeah,
I agree. And I believe it does start with education and changing the narrative, as you put it. Right on. Jennelle, okay, same question for you.
Yeah.
How do you see workforce engagement evolving over the next year, 2 years, 3 years?
Can I first add on to what Kiva just said? Because I love what you said. And we were at IMTS a month or so ago, and one of the most inspiring things that we saw as a team was exactly what you were describing. Whole classrooms of kids coming down the aisles with the teacher, homeschooled kids with families, and like people bringing in their babies, and like 6-year-olds and educating them, and people one-on-one that were mentoring high school students. And it was so inspiring, and to see the excitement from the workforce and what they wanted to do, and as opposed to other industries and other sectors and other trade shows that we've been to, I have not seen that type of adoption and excitement, which was really inspiring to see. But to your question, I think what has been most impactful shift in the last year, I think stems back to COVID. I think COVID was a big turning point from what we saw in terms of where everybody was doing trade shows. That was how all the leads and referrals came in. And it was very close-minded in terms of, I don't need more leads. And once COVID happened and that whole channel became shut down, couldn't go door knocking, couldn't use the same channels that they were used to. I think people started to slowly open up in terms of their ability to see, hey, maybe there is other channels that I need to be exploring. And as time has gone on, I think this last year has been by far the most progressive that we've seen in terms of open-mindedness to technology, even transparency across like sales and marketing departments, where historically it was a lot of friction and more of an uphill battle to get people moving in the same direction. Like sales wanted to do one thing and marketing was kind of functioning over in the corner, sending emails, but not talking about what the sales conversations were. And so, similar to what Kiva was saying, the older generation who might hear something in a machine and the younger generation who is needing of this technology, kind of having that open-mindedness in lots of different avenues has been a really exciting change that has moved the needle pretty significantly and gotten, I think, a lot more done by simply working together.
Great points. Yes. And I did want to also mention, so IMTS, I think most people listening to this are probably familiar with it, but I was there as well. And it was a great event. The International Manufacturing Technology Show. It was in Chicago this year. And there were something like over 100,000 people.
So many people.
It was massive.
Lots of blisters.
Yes. That's a lot of knocking.
I told the team, buy the best sneakers that you can find and test them beforehand.
Definitely.
Well, I hope you got some pictures and B-roll of all those kids, because I think that's that's part of as an industry. I think we need to put some TikTok out there and some other things that like really do change that lens.
They love the swag.
They do like swag.
We had fun with them.
It was such a good event. Well, this has been such a great conversation. So before we wrap, I do want to give each of you an opportunity to maybe share final thoughts, tell listeners about your organization and how to get in touch with you. So Jennelle, maybe if I could ask you to go first.
So we help organizations who are looking to essentially generate more leads and to streamline their processes, whether that's on the sales or marketing side. Everybody we work with uses HubSpot. We work with lots of other technologies and platforms to help execute on those campaigns, but we function as what I would consider a traditional digital agency. So everything from social content generation, website builds. You can contact us through my LinkedIn, our website, marketveep.com. And we're always happy to have a conversation. There's no pressure. We just want to help people grow and learn new fun things.
Thanks, Jennelle. All right, Kiva.
Yeah, I mean, I work for the World Economic Forum, so we're a nonprofit, and we run a program called the Global Lighthouse Network. All of those things are online, and you don't have to be a member of the forum to participate in the Global Lighthouse Network, and we're desperately looking for more North American partners that have done some amazing things. We're best practices around people, planet, and process to really showcase to other people that no matter how old the factory is, you're never too old to change and upgrade and transition. So look us up online, again at the World Economic Forum. And then for me personally, I'm on LinkedIn.
This is wonderful. Thank you both. Thank you, Jennelle. Thank you, Kiva. I really appreciate you joining us and sharing your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was Jennelle McGrath, the CEO of Market Veep, and Kiva Allgood, head of the Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Supply Chains and member of the Executive Committee with the World Economic Forum. Thank you all for joining us today. You can access the full Future of Work in Manufacturing report by following the link provided in our show notes. And if you found this episode informative, don't forget to subscribe, rate, leave us review. And to everyone listening in, thank you so much for being a part of the future of manufacturing.